The white envelope. Traci sat by her kitchen window, waiting eagerly for her package to arrive. For full context of this story, please read my series Visiting the In-Laws, Part 4 in particular. Traci sat by her kitchen window, gazing down the suburban street. This was her morning ritual every Tuesday and Friday unless she had early aerobics classes to hold. Today was her day off, so she waited there in her underwear. She sighed and sipped at her coffee, as she often did while waiting for the mailman. She browsed through her phone, put her headphones on, and rested her head in her hands. Her eye caught a fly buzzing at the window, bouncing off the glass, keeping its persistence and trying again and again to escape. Traci opened the window to help the poor thing escape, but it bounced off the glass one last time, did a U-turn, and flew across the room and into the hallway. Traci looked down on her long, strong legs, admiring the hours of work she had put into them. She stretched and put her hands on her hips and felt the nice curvature of her firm ass. She had been a pudgy kid growing up, pale-skinned and freckled, and no one's favorite. But the hours working out at the fitness center changed all that. She smiled, thinking of all her former classmates who had bullied her through school. Nowadays, the same people turned their heads at her on the street. More than once, she had the pleasure of rejecting drinks on the town from her former bullies. The last time she was bullied was enjoyable, though. At least eventually. It was down at her boyfriend Leroy's local bar. She had gone there to settle the score with both her cheating boyfriend. It turned out that being a was easy around Lisa, Traci as she thought of that night, and her groin tingled. She brushed the thought off her mind along with the lock of hair that had fallen down in her eye. In her ears, Tom Petty reminded her that the waiting is the hardest part. She pressed pause, removed her headphones, and sighed again. Then she heard the familiar hum of the mail van. Soon, it would hit the bump in the road by the Sollingers' house. She stretched her neck to get a better view. And sure enough, the old faithful U.S. Postal Service came around the turn by the Sollingers, hit the bump, and thumped loudly on worn-out springs. It passed the Sollinger house but stopped at both the Thompsons and Andersons. Blushing with anticipation, Traci tiptoed around herself as the van came to a stop. She watched as the mailman rustled inside the van and heard the loud clank as he opened the mailbox, shoving what seemed to be an abundance of advertisements and flyers into the mailbox, and finally slammed the box shut. He saw her standing in the window and waved at her, and she lifted hers in reply. As soon as the van pulled off the curb, she ran for the door, down the driveway, and stopped by the mailbox. Across the street, old Theobald Johnson sat on his front porch drinking his morning coffee. The old hag wife of his was probably in the kitchen cursing at the scantily clad redhead standing at the curb. Traci decided old Theobald deserved a morning pickup and took her time bending down, swaying her hips, as she opened the box. Walmart, Target, Safeway, and Aldi were trying to convince her they had great deals, but none of them could grab her attention. Her eyes were on the white, padded envelope with the little pink, heart-shaped sticker on it. She sniffed the envelope and smiled. Aching her back, she made sure her full bosom drew old Theobald's attention. She made sure to add extra sway to her hips as she walked over to the paper recycling bin and rid herself of the flyers before heading back inside. She jumped on the sofa, curled her legs under her, and caressed the envelope. She had been sent nearly identical white envelopes twice weekly for almost 2 months. 2 months since that night at the bar when her life changed forever. She remembered how Lisa had humiliated her when she confronted her about fucking her boyfriend. How, for all her training, she turned weak under the touch of the tall, strong black girl. How she so effortlessly had been tied behind her back and flung upon the pool table. How the black girl's hot, alcohol-infused breath felt on her neck. Traci as her hands started stroking the outside of her. They were already moist. Lisa Simone was a few years older than herself. Traci was a sophomore in high school the year Lisa graduated. They had never been part of the same circle, but Lisa used to hang out with Leroy and his friends. Leroy was hot, and Traci had a big crush on him. But this was years before her fitness regime had started, and she was just a big, fat redhead with freckles. The only attention she could hope for from Leroy was a condescending laugh. Lisa never bothered her, mostly because she never noticed her. Thinking back on that night, Traci vaguely remembered her voice saying, "Stop," but her body and mind conflicted. Each touch from the sexy, black girl had burned her skin with lust. As she lay helpless on top of the pool table, she remembered all the faces staring at her and no one coming to her aid. The embarrassment of feeling her pants getting soaked as she lay helpless on top of that grimy pool table. Luckily, no one came to her help. Traci's crotch was burning hot, and her were soaked. She threw the envelope onto the table and decided to head out for a long run. She hadn't gotten far before her yoga pants developed a dark, wet spot at her crotch. "People will just think I'm sweating," Traci lied to herself. The fabric was grinding at her crotch with each step, and her started poking through the sports bra. Traci had been horny for 2 months but never to this point. Just a little longer, she thought to herself as she soon found the forest trail leading up to the park. She hurried up the narrow path, ran about 100 yards, and dashed in behind the bushes. She pulled her pants and down and sat herself on the ground. She vigorously started rubbing her swollen as she put her other hand before her mouth to muffle her. Anyone could walk up that path at any given time and hear her, but that only made her earn warmer. She slid 2 fingers inside herself, then 3, and hammered away at her wet hole. She came in a big and lay there, panting, listening for movement on the path. Slowly she got up and pulled her pants back up, peeked through the bushes to see if the coast was clear, and then ran up to the park. She picked up her pace as she passed the big fountain and yielded to a big group of schoolchildren studying the statue of Mayor Griffin and past the library. "Fly, Traci, fly." She thought to herself. Almost an hour later, she stood at her front door, stretching, sweat running down her face and back. She finished her stretches and headed inside. From the hallway, she peeked into the living room as if to make sure the white envelope was still on the table. Her feet moved her over to the table where she picked it up, put her nose to it, and sniffed it. Leroy wouldn't be home for yet another hour and a half. So she was hoping her long run would help her body cope with the urge of her groin. She put the envelope down and headed for the bathroom, got undressed, and tossed her sweat and cum-drenched pants in the washing bin. She met her own eyes in the large bathroom mirror, studied her sweaty body, and remembered all the years of looking at herself in shame. No more Traci Pudge, or oink, oink, and never again. Filthy, however. Yeah, she could live with that. She turned on the shower, set the dial to cold, and stepped into the freezing water. Her skin prickled with goosebumps as she washed her body juices off herself, cooling her burning hot skin and soothing her aching crotch. She stood there, resting her head against the wall until the cold water started to hurt. Then, she stood there a while longer. Refreshed, she got out of the shower and started drying herself, patting her long hair and twisting the towel around her head. She watched small droplets of water running down her tit and patted her stiff nipples. She bent down to dry her legs and shot her ass in the air to an imaginary audience. Smiling to herself, looking into the mirror, she said to herself, "Traci Sullivan, you are a bombshell." The ritual took her almost an hour, 30 more minutes to go, she thought as she stepped into the living room. She sat down, staring at the white envelope. Again, body conquered mind as she saw her arms reach for it and tear it open. She ignored the small note attached to the vacuum-sealed plastic bag but knew it read something like, "Enjoy yourself." She ripped the bag open, got the pink panties out, and took a long, big sniff. The scent of Lisa's brought her right back to the night on the pool table. Lisa sat astride her chest in alcohol-infused lust rage, kissing her and releasing a full shot of tequila down her throat and then shoving her wet, black in her face. She remembered the sweet flow of Lisa covering her face and her big, swollen its way inside her mouth, and she remembered how hot her burned as she lapped the black woman's. And how Lisa had spun around and tore her top open, poured shots of tequila over her bare chest. And, finally, how she ripped the crotch of her pants open and ate her throbbing, how Lisa planted her on her face as Leroy jammed his inside her black ass. Watching her boyfriend slam into Lisa made her wish it was herself. She remembered after entering her and emptying themselves into her, how Lisa had her ass and driven her toward the climax until Sheldon finally shoved his fat, black into her, making her squirt as she came on the white in her. Traci moaned as her fingers crooked inside her wet, and with the other hand, stuck 2 fingers up her, and that's how Leroy found her. "Wow," he said, looking at his girlfriend sprawled on the couch, her fingers deep inside her. Traci leaped off the couch and clawed at her boyfriend's pants, undoing his belt and zipper and pulling them down with his hung there, half limp with a slight odor of sweat and urine. She sucked it into her mouth as she rubbed herself, slobbering all over his, the veiny, big, black sprung to life in her mouth. "Fuck me. Me silly," she shouted as she flung herself on the couch, head down, ass up. She pressed the pink panties into her face, inhaling Lisa's aroma as her dripped down her legs. Leroy got out of his clothes and rammed into her wet hole, slamming his down inside her. Traci came instantly, and her body shook in intense spasms as her boyfriend's thick, hard thrust into her. "Oh.fuck." She screamed as her legs stopped shaking. Leroy pulled out of his girlfriend's dripping and pushed into her. "Yeah. Fuck my ass. Fuck my ass. Fuck my." Traci hollered. Leroy pounded into her, enjoying this newfound love his girlfriend had found. Just a few months back, she would have kicked him in the groin if he even as little as licked at her back door. Now, she couldn't get enough. Traci rubbed Lisa's panties over her face, hearing Leroy panting as he drove his into her. "Don't you fucking see, you m. Don't you fucking dare to see that you m." She moaned in anticipation of a new wave of orgasms. Leroy felt his balls tying up, wiped the sweat from his brow, and slowed down slightly. "Don't fucking stop. Oh fuck. I'm coming. I'm coming." Her ass spasmed, sending shivers up her spine and down her legs. The sensation seemed to dart at her toes, making them curl. Her calves cramped, and her thighs started trembling as the sensation hit her pussy, making it gush or come down her legs. Leroy felt her ass clench hard around his cock, milking it. "Fuck. Yeah, baby, I'm coming. Don't. You. Fucking. Dare." The crazed redhead he used to know as his loving girlfriend yelled. Traci's spasms subsided as she licked at the fabric covering her mouth. She collapsed on the couch and turned her head. Leroy emptied himself on Traci's face, covering her in thick ropes of cum. Drenching the pink panties on his girlfriend's face as she sucked his cum through the fabric, he looked down on his girlfriend and blessed the night she had challenged Lisa Simone to a bar fight and lost. By losing that fight, she had won so much more. He watched as his girlfriend got up, walked to the kitchen, packed the pink panties in a vacuum seal bag, closed the lid, set the sealer to moist and pressed the button. Once done, she went into the bedroom, opened the bottom drawer of her dresser and put it neatly in with the other sealed plastic bags. She lay on the bed, caressing her, and smiled at her boyfriend watching from the door. "Go grab some food and a beer and get some rest. Then come back here and fuck me again."